It looks like we are live for day 2 for Meet the Authors. Yesterday was so much fun, but it was so scrambled. We were rushing to get online. So we thought we'd really take this opportunity to introduce ourselves. I'm Mary Alice Curran, and I'm an educator, I'm a consultant, I run events and experiences, and we're just really helping the authors, and we're going to be behind the scenes. We're working on coming up with any questions that are live on YouTube and making sure that the authors have them. I'm here with my colleague and very dear friend, Jamie Donnelly.
Hi, guys. We are excited because these authors are phenomenal, and we're just honored to be a part of this and sharing it and streaming it live through YouTube. You can actually view it every single day. You can share it on your social channels. You can have it running on various places, but where you want to collaborate is on YouTube. So on YouTube, there is going to be a chat box, so feel free to have a conversation, ask questions, live questions of the author. They'll get those questions and they'll be answering live as well.
So from here, I will let the 3 authors take it away. We're just going to be mute in the background.
All right, guys.
Okay. I'm Roland Smith. Written a lot of books. We talked about that yesterday, Peak and The Captain's Dogs and, 50 other books. And today, I guess we're going to be talking about where we get our ideas. I think that's the theme of today. And so that's what we'll do. But you guys should introduce yourselves and we'll start talking about where we get our ideas.
Hi, I'm Jerry Pallotta. Thank you for watching, and we look forward to having a great day today. Mary Alice, were you going to show Roland's covers? Were you going to do that so the teachers could see some of the covers of the books he has?
We decided not to do that.
You're not doing that? Sorry, everybody.
Oh,
Jack.
I must be up. Yeah. So I'm Jack Gantos, and I write books. I write a range of books, from picture books to upper elementary to middle school to high school books. I did bring a few books that I could hold up, just in case we just wanted to make sure. Let me reach down here. This is Rotten Ralph. Picture book, very thin. Okay, I was on a diet. And then this is Dead Ended Norvelt, which was the town I'm from, Norvelt. So it's a book about Norvelt, a book about history, and won the Newbery Award. So that was a good one. This is Joy Pigs Who Swallowed the Key. This one, kids come up to me with keys on strings and swallow them and pull them up. So I know that book's working. And then this is a book on writing radar. So we'll talk about that too. But today we're going to kind of rotate back. I think I'll rotate back to Roland. And Roland, do you want to get started?
Sure.
On your tips and your
process? I will. I'm going to show a book though, because you did. You ready?
Okay. I didn't mean to break the rules.
This is a book called Peak. It did not win the Newbery Medal. Okay. Should have. So a real common, we all go to lots of schools. I don't know how many schools we've been to between us. I don't know. What do you think, Jerry? How many? 10,000.
Between the 3 of us?
Yeah.
10,000.
Yeah. Okay. We'll just round it up to 10,000 or down. And one of the most common questions when you're at a school is, of course, people say, where do you get your ideas? And so today we're just going to talk about where we get our ideas. And I can start off and tell you where I get mine. Mine come from reading books, traveling, talking to people, my imagination, and out of the blue. But one thing you need to know about ideas is that not every idea you come up with turns into a book. So when you get an idea for a book, you go, oh man, that's a really great idea. And it might be a really great idea, but before I start maybe thinking that I want to turn that into a book, spending a year or 2 working on a book, I have to really, really think about that particular idea. And I have to do a tremendous amount of research to make sure that it's a good enough idea. To to turn into a book. And the other thing you need to understand about at least writing novels anyway, is that a novel has thousands of ideas. It's not just one idea. There might be one kind of main idea, but there are 1,000 other little ideas in order to make that story kind of come together. So my ideas come from everywhere. Most of them come from my background and my experience. Before I became an author, I was an animal guy. I was a zoo guy, and I spent 20 years working all over the world with animals. It's very important to me. It's a huge part of my life. And so a lot of my books have to do with, at least the novels have to do with the traveling I've done and the animals I've worked with and the people I've worked with all over the world, because that's something that, even though I'm not a research biologist anymore, that played a really, really important role. I think I'll talk about one idea because this is kind of interesting. I mean, I know there's a fan out there of The Captain's Dog. So I wrote this book called The Captain's Dog, My Journey with the Lewis and Clark Tribe.
Wow.
And a few years back, during the 200th anniversary, or before the 200th anniversary of the Lewis and Clark expedition, a publisher called me up and they said, Roland, you know a lot about Lewis and Clark. And I said, I do. And they said, will you write a nonfiction book about Lewis and Clark? And I said, no. And they said, why not? I said, because I want to write an adventure novel about Lewis and Clark. And the thing I found curious about Lewis and Clark is that before they left on their journey in 1804, Meriwether Lewis bought a dog, a big Newfoundland dog, and he paid $20 for it in 1804. And that's like thousands of dollars in 1804 for a dog. And he took that dog with him. And when I read the journals, the original journals of Lewis and Clark, which I had many years before, I thought, well, what did the dog think of that? And that really became the idea of that story. I wanted to tell the story of Lewis and Clark through the dog's viewpoint, which was really kind of difficult if you think about it. And this is when you have an idea and it gets complicated because my main character, which is a dog, cannot communicate with anybody because he doesn't talk. And so that was a really, really interesting kind of way to work on a book. But the idea for that book came from my curiosity about what the dog thought of this incredible journey they took. And so that gives you kind of a little bit of insight in how some of these ideas came together. I wrote another novel called Beneath, and I wrote Beneath. It takes place underneath New York City. I wrote that because I'm a little bit claustrophobic. I mean, normally I'm a pretty brave guy. I mean, if a lion walked in right now, wherever you're sitting, you'd be kind of freaked out. I wouldn't be so freaked out. I would know exactly what to do because I was the senior feline keeper for 10 years. So I know all about cats. But you get me into a small little space, I get really freaked out. And sometimes writers write about things that bother them about themselves. And so that's another idea. I mean, that's why I wrote that book. I wanted to write about claustrophobia and brothers and a bunch of other things. But the main idea is I wanted to write about claustrophobia. So I'll turn it over to.
Can I interrupt you, Roland?
Yeah.
I read Beneath. I
Yeah.
love that book. When I read that book, I thought, how did anyone ever think of a book like this?
Yeah.
For all of you out there, in the book Beneath, there's a society that lives under Manhattan. So there's Manhattan, the streets, then there's the subway, then under the subway, there's a river. Under the river is a society that lives there.
And it's all true.
Am I allowed to say that?
Yeah.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, there is.
After I read that book, I was like, whoa, where did that idea come from?
It's
Holy
actually my favorite book I've written. So thanks. Jack, where do you get your ideas? Your twisted ideas.
I think certainly in the beginning, you know, like let's just take Rotten Ralph. Rotten Ralph was the first book I had published. It was the 13th book I wrote. The first 12 picture books were turned down for all various and good reasons. I know people, you know, cry about being rejected, but you know, some rejections really you've earned them, you know, by writing a book with such massive flaws that it deserves not to be published. And so Rotten Ralph came around. I had a cat. I had a cat. I was writing these writing these terrible books, and I thought fall back on the adage, write about what you know about. So I thought, well, I'm going to write about a cat. Better get one. So I went to the Boston Globe and I went to the pet giveaway section, and I got a nice couple from Australia at Harvard Graduate School, and they said, we're giving away a cat. So great. So I go over, take the subway over to Harvard. I go to graduate housing, knock on the door. I hear this gruff voice say, come in. I'm like, okay. Open the door. There's this man pacing back and forth. There's this woman crying in the corner. I'm like, okay, I see what's going on here. He hates the cat and she loves the cat. I go, I'm here for the cat. And she goes, it's in the bedroom. I'm like, great. So we skip a beat. Okay, I go to the bedroom. I can't find the cat. I go, no cat. They go, it's under the bed. I'm like, oh man, graduate housing under a bed. So I crawl under there, grab this cat. It does not like me, spitting mad. I don't have a cat carrier. I just have a bath towel. So I put the cat on the bath towel and roll him up like a Tootsie Roll. Head sticking out one end, feet out the other. And just screeching a mile a minute. I go out there to the living room. Woman's crying now. She's really wailing, crying. The guy's looking a lot happier. And so I leave. I take the subway home. Now, if you've been on the subway in Boston, it's steel wheels on steel rails. It screeches around the corner. Screech! Really high-pitched sound. And that cat just starts to wiggle and then flops over. Oh my God, the cat had a coronary. So I'm bringing this limp cat home. Don't even know the name. So I go home, I put him down, I open the door, look down, nothing but a towel. The cat revived, came back, ran off. I'm putting signs up all over the neighborhood. Cat, I don't even have a name, cat. Finally, it came out from behind the dresser. About 3 days later, I guess it got hungry. So decided to put up with me. And it was just a kind of a vicious cat. And so instead of writing picture books that were like about, sweet mice and wonderful little creatures, I thought, you know what? Swing your cat, buddy. Just write about Ron Ralph, this guy. So I wrote that book, and that's the one they liked out of all of them. That's the one that broke the ice. And I've always sort of, because of that story, I've always felt very confident about having some tissue of the book being something I know about intimately. So
There you go.
that's where I started.
I should mention this before you go, Jerry, because some of the people that are watching probably weren't here yesterday. Jerry and Jack and me are all good friends. We've known each other for years and years and years and years. I mean, we go to conferences, and at night we go out and work out because we're really healthy guys. But anyway, so we've known each other for a long time. Go ahead, Jerry.
Well, someone asked me, where'd you get your ideas? Where'd your inspiration come from? I don't know if you can see that. There's my kids.
Oh,
They're
yeah.
big now. But there's Neil, Jill, Eric, Sheila. So when they were little, my wife made me read to them. So I was reading to them. But I didn't just read like every other night. I read every night. She was strict, like, you're reading to the kids. So I read to my kids. And then one night I said to myself, hey, I could do this. It wasn't that I didn't like the books. It wasn't that I thought the books were bad. I just thought, hey, I could do this. I actually thought the children's books I were reading were really clever and really neat. But of course, my kids were little at the time. 2 of them were in diapers. The others were like, maybe 4 and 2 years old, something like that. And the books are like 1, 2, 3. The books are like this: A for apple, B for ball, C for cat. A for apple, B for ball, C for cat. After you read A is for apple about 50 times, you start to think, maybe there's something a little more here. So I said to myself, I'm going to write a book. So I thought about where I grew up. I grew up near the ocean. I'm really an ocean guy. There's my very first book, the Ocean Alphabet book. So my idea was 1 creature per page, make it simple, and have a little text. And whatever I wrote had to be true because, look, this 1 creature per page. I didn't draw the pictures. I hired my cousin to draw the pictures. My cousin Frankie drew the pictures. And 1 creature, 2 or 3 sentences per page. That was my idea. So That was the inspiration for my very first book. Then one day, I threw my kids in the carriage. I mean, I drove off somewhere. I said, come on, we're going to go to the Audubon Society. We're going to go see birds today. So I was giving my wife a break. I take the kids. We're going around the bird place. We end up in the gift shop. My kids say, buy me a toy. And I go, no, we're spying. So we're looking to see if anyone wrote a bird alphabet book. Sure enough, no bird alphabet books in the bird place. So what did I do? I wrote a bird alphabet book. And then what happened after that? I started to think about getting bit by mosquitoes, the girl down the street who used to bite beetles in half, my cousin that taught me all about cicadas and all that sort of stuff. So I wrote the Icky Bug alphabet book. So I thought back to my own childhood, all the bugs that I hated, and I thought, I'm gonna write a book. What I was doing that I didn't really realize is I was writing thematic nonfiction alphabet books. So that's how my career started. The inspiration was from reading to my kids. And I grew up at the ocean. I knew all these ocean creatures. In my head, I thought, yeah, I could write a book, A through C of the ocean, instead of A for apple, B for ball, C for cat. So that's how my career really started.
We have a question, and I'll read it. It's actually from my sister. It's a woman named Pam Munoz Ryan. You may have heard her. She wrote some books like Echo and stuff. You know, she's pretty good writer.
I heard.
Yeah, you know, so she's my sis, and she says, you have all written picture books and novels or early chapter books. How different is their approach to a novel versus a picture book? Why don't you start that, Jack? Did you get it?
Yeah. Thanks, Pam. It's nice to hear from you. You're always a favorite, fabulous writer.
Difficult question we've ever got.
Yeah, I know. She
Thanks
tweeted
for doing that to us.
Yeah,
just right.
just leave it to my sister.
So the most. So here's what I normally think right off the bat. When I get ready to write a novel, I go, there's a year, maybe two. Could be 2 years. Could be a 2-year novel. Norvelt was a 2-year novel. Joey Pigza was 6 months. And that's with touring as well. And most of them fall somewhere between, I would say between a year and a half. And part of it is getting the ideas, part of it's doing the drafts, part of it's doing the polish. I'd say about 100 drafts. And then you have to read it over and over again because you have so many blind spots. And you can't really get the whole novel in the beginning. As Roland aptly pointed out, you know, yes, there is one overarching theme or one big idea, but frankly, every sentence is an idea, and every sentence deserves to be as perfectly pitched as the theme or the character's voice or anything else. So you really have to chisel it, polish it, and tweak it just right, and just get it right, and then walk away from it. And I don't mind taking that time, because when I walk away from them, then I'm like, okay, I'll love that novel forever, no matter what happens to it. Because just as though I've had success with some books, I've had absolute, financial failures with others. Like Love, Curse of the Rumballs, which I loved. I keep getting letters saying, how did you make up that, the eugenics movement, the American eugenics movement? I'm like, I didn't make that up, So it's like, I must have gone a little too far afield. They don't teach eugenics anymore. They don't teach the American Nazi Party anymore.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Jerry, what do you think? I mean, you've written some big books. You wrote the
I wrote a book of short stories.
And that's a bigger book. Was that different than writing Who Would Win or any of those books?
Yeah, I worked on that 11 years. I kept writing short stories. I have 71st cousins. My idea was to write a story for every cousin. So every time I had a break, I'd write it. Every time I had an idea, I'd write it. I didn't realize that there were 70 stories in my head, I wrote one short story and then I thought, wow, I think I'll write another one. And I ended up writing about 70 or 80 short stories over the course of 11 or 12 years. And then I decided to put it in a book form.
Yeah.
It's
a
called
great
Ocean
book, by the way.
Cousins.
I love
What's that?
It's a great book. I love that book.
Well, that book has 30 stories in it. I have Ocean Cousins 2 I'm working on now, but I'm too fidgety to get it done.
Yeah. Scattered.
Yeah.
Creative.
You got to take a drive around the block and write.
For me, I've written several picture books, but I actually have to admit I didn't write them. My wife wrote those books, and I helped her with the research and so forth. So she wrote those books, and I wrote, I don't know, 10 nonfiction books, which are certainly a little bit thinner. And writing nonfiction and fiction are kind of really different, sort of different ball games when you're writing a book. I mean, I think picture books are really difficult to write. I mean, a lot of people think I'm just going to write a picture book. The thinking being it's thin, therefore it's easy. The picture book writers that I know, and I know a lot of them, I think it's really, really hard because you have such a limited palette and you have so forwards. And Jack was talking about how you have to make every sentence shine. It's a little bit easier, I think, to hide sentences that aren't like totally perfect, but in a novel, but in a picture book, nothing can be hidden because there's very few words that you use. So I think they're really difficult to write. Really, really difficult to write. I'm glad that Marie writes the picture books. I mean, I help her a little bit, but that's what she does. I think it's really hard because everybody does it. You're at a school and someone says, hey, I didn't want to write a novel, so I wrote a picture book instead. And I think, well, that's hard. I think it's really hard to do a really good picture book, I think.
I think so too. When I write them, and I always worked with Nicole Rubel, really fabulous illustrator, really.
She lives down the street. Yeah.
So good. But she's just a wonderful person, Roland. I hope you get to spend some time with her. But what I would always do with Nicole is I would probably turn into her triple the wordage per page that I knew the story was. So I would lard the writing and give it to her so she could see what I was seeing through the writing. And then when I got it back with the illustrations, then the redundancy between those extra lines that I had larded and the illustration, I could now pull those lines back and then just keep it right down to the most essential line.
I love that technique. That's a really, really good idea. I hope people who are trying to write picture books understood that. That's like probably the best advice I've ever heard about writing a picture book. If you get to choose your illustrator, if you're working with the illustrator, and even if a publisher picks the illustrator, that's not a bad way to really go to see what the illustrator does before you start taking words out. That's a great idea.
Yeah, it's almost sounds a little bit sneaky, but if you're working with a good partner, they know what you're doing and they know you're feeding them and they know you're going to pull back. And so they know they can be really elaborate with that illustration because you are going to pull all that extra language back. So when you look at Nicole Rubel's art, I mean, that is alive art. Every square inch is alive. And so when you look at Rotten Ralph, you get one sentence, two sentences. It's a big page if it has 5 sentences on it.
Mm-hmm. That is interesting. Let's see, what else do we have for questions here? Oh, here's something from Susan Hutchins, who we know. And she's just talking about getting ideas. She goes, how many authors are already thinking about a book that involves coronavirus or some similar type of disease? Let me tell you a story about this. When I was in the zoo business, they would have these big conferences full of wildlife artists, and the wildlife artists would come to the zoo and we would allow them to take photographs of animals like wolves and cats and all this stuff. And they'd come in and we'd give them tours behind the scene. And the next year, all their beautiful artwork would come out and it would be the same wolf drawn all over and over again by different artists, because that's the photograph they had. It was very interesting to see that kind of thing. So I think that I don't know any authors that are working on a coronavirus book, but I'm sure that's an idea that's being played with by a lot of people, I would guess.
Yeah,
That's
that's why I'm not going to do one of those books.
Yeah, me too. Me too.
You know what I told someone? They asked me, what are you doing during the coronavirus? And I said, well, I'm home, but I'm working on all these book fragments I have all over the house.
Mhm.
You know, I finally got a chance to sit down and sort of piece them all together.
Yeah.
Mary Alice, what am I doing wrong? You're saying I'm not on some screen somewhere?
Should we take a question? Is
Any
there-
more questions? Do you have more questions? I think I asked all the questions that are listed here. We can keep
Jerry,
talking.
you are, I just am unmuting myself. You are on. We can see you. You're
Yeah.
perfect. That if you saw a message, it was from earlier before. But
Oh,
there
okay.
are some other comments, and I know, just so that all of you know, we've got someone from Canada and we've got someone from Scotland joining in as well. Um,
Hey, we were just told Scotland's there. Hi, Scotland. Greetings from Boston, Massachusetts. And hi, Canada. We heard Canada's out there somewhere.
And I know you've got a student, particularly from upstate New York, watching you right now as well.
Yeah.
Who's formulating a question for you.
Okay, go ahead.
Well, I don't have the question yet, but I'll put it in the chat box.
Okay.
Can I tell a couple more stories of inspiration?
Please.
So I walk into a school one day, you know, and they say, oh, we just want you to talk to the kindergartners for a few minutes. You know, I actually like the kindergartners for an hour, but they said, oh, we just want you to read them a book or something. I said, okay. So I walk in the kindergarten class and the teacher's cutting an apple. Cuts an apple, half for you, half for you. Cuts another apple, quarter for you, quarter for you, quarter for you. Cuts another apple for these little kids, third for you, a third for you, a third for you. And I went home that day. I drove home, and all I could think of was this teacher cutting those apples. And I went right on the internet, and I looked and looked and looked. And I never found a book like this. So I wrote it myself. There it is, Apple. There it is, Apple Fractions.
Oh, yeah,
So
nice.
if you want to know the inspiration for the book, thank you to that kindergarten teacher. I should have kept your name so I could thank you in the book, but I didn't do it. Sorry, I can't.
How about the royalties there, Jerry?
What's that?
How about the royalties on that book?
Absolutely.
Huh?
For that teacher.
Why don't you
Well,
pay her?
What?
You should run her down and give
I
her.
can't find her. I can't find her. Teacher, if you're out there,
Everybody
call
says,
me.
I would have paid her, but I couldn't find her.
I'll tell you another inspiration for you novel guys. All right.
Yeah.
This is picture book guy speaking. So I'm at a science convention, and over here they have molten lead. So I tell my son at the time, Eric, he was 10. I go, stay away from that lead. And then over here they had all different gems and rocks. And he goes, buy me some rocks, but I didn't buy him any. So then over here they had, you know, frozen ice or something. So I'm in the science conferences, all this stuff going on, and I'm signing books. After about 2 hours, Eric kicks me in the shin. He goes, I don't like you signing books. I'm tired of this. So I go, okay, let's walk around the hall and see who else we can see. So we walk around the hall, and sure enough, there's a guy selling skulls. So my son says, buy me a skull. So I asked the guy, how much is a skull? He goes, well, you can have this skunk for $8. I did have $8 because I was selling books and I had some cash in my pocket. So I give the guy $8. I now have a skunk skull. That tied Eric up for about an hour. After an hour, I'm sick of the skunk skull. Buy me another skull. So we take off, we stop signing books, we go over, we buy a cat skull. So now we have a cat skull. The cat skull was like $19. So by the way, here's one of my skulls right here. If you wonder where book ideas come from, there is a jaguar skull. No, this is a mountain lion, excuse me. A cougar, a mountain lion. So there it is right there. I'm sorry I can't get this camera. And what happened is my wife was climbing the hills behind the Hollywood sign, and a cougar ran in front of her. And she did everything wrong. She ran downhill, everything wrong you're not supposed to do. Isn't that right, Roland?
That's right.
Roland taught me you're supposed to act big, stay with your group, not run and pretend you're prey, as the cat would go after you. Anyway, so I bought a skull for Christmas. just because she was scared out of her wits. But anyways, it gave me an idea. So look, I wrote a skull alphabet book, and I thought my son loved those skulls, right? And I thought he can't be the only kid in America that loves skulls. There must be other kids that love skulls. So there's the inspiration behind the skull alphabet book and the inspiration for Apple Fractions, a couple of my other books. Of
And
course,
Jerry sent me a wolf skull.
that's true.
That's true. He sent me a wolf skull.
My nephew in Alaska sent me a wolf skull, and I thought, wow, Roland wrote a wolf book and saved the red wolf from extinction. I'm going to send it to Roland.
Yeah, it's the tamest wolf I've ever been around. It's very tame. It just kind of sits there. It's nice. We're about done with our time, but tomorrow, we're talking about actually how we write books. So that'll be an interesting session. We're going to go through the step-by-step process, and there's a lot of different ways of writing books. Jack writes one way, I write another way, Jerry writes another way. So you're going to get 3 different viewpoints on writing, how to actually write a book. And this is a good time to maybe think about that, because we're all kind of stuck inside. Great time to read books, and a good time to start writing a book too. You can all do this, that's for sure.
Oh, I think so too. Yeah.
Can you answer that one last down? If you look in the chat box when you write, at least this would be a great way to end up
Did I
today.
click on the chat box?
Yep.
It says,
I
from
think-
Susan Hutchins,
Yeah.
you see, it says, when you write, do
Okay.
you see pictures in your head? Then are you happy with the illustrations you actually get? That's interesting. It's more for picture book people, but I think that's for me, I'm probably the least experienced of all these friends of writing books. So I'm going to let you guys answer that question. Do you see pictures in your head? And are you happy with the illustration that you actually get?
Well, I know I'm going to jump in front of Jerry on this because I know I'm just going to jump in for a sec. I want to say that from talking to people, talking to writers and talking to illustrators, but talking to writers, I'd say that 50% are wildly happy and 50% are kind of disappointed.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Because they saw something else. And why does that disappointment exist? Why can't we have good communication? Because right between the writer and the illustrator is the editor sticking his head right in
And the art director.
yeah, and the art director. And they don't always like it when the writer and the illustrator collaborate. Somehow they don't feel like they've had enough power and input in the book. But my advice to writers is press it. Know your illustrator. And illustrators, when you read a clunky line, tell the writer, this just isn't working. Or if you have a better idea, collaborate. That's what makes a picture book a great picture book. You can really tell the ones that operate well. For instance, when you read books that are illustrated and written by the same person, there's something to that, right? There's something
Right.
silky about it. Okay, Jerry.
Yeah, here you go, Jerry. What do you
I
think?
have about 100 books in print, and 90 of them I work side by side with the illustrator. So I acted as my own art director. I know that's very unusual, but that's what I did. But I can say this, the other illustrators that I had nothing to do with, they did a beautiful job. I really am very happy with all, I have to say it. So when Jack said 50% are really happy with their books, I'm really happy with how all my books look. I mean, I don't know if I could find this in time. Maybe I could, but look at this. Here's Rob Bolster. He's great. I mean, if you're a kid, I mean, don't you just love that? Look at that thing.
Yeah.
Great White and the Killer Whale. I mean, Rob Bolster, he did an unbelievable job. So, I was sitting next to him throughout the book every couple of weeks saying, do this, do that, move this, move that. Sometimes he would say, get out of my office. I don't want you in here. Sometimes he would say, yes, that was a really good comment. You know what I mean? So I think you're right. The more involved.
Let me just say that, for us,
My opinion is
for the
author-
novel, whoops,
That-
sorry. I was going to
My
say, for novels, you get covers. The cover art on your novels, Roland.
Yeah.
You like your covers?
Yeah, I like most of them. I mean, I mean, I mean, I've really never, that's kind of out of my bailiwick. I don't, I might get it and go, but it's not an argument that I choose to pick with a publisher unless it's historically inaccurate. And I've had covers come that I wrote a book called Elephant Run. In fact, this is the original cover right here, Elephant Run. And it starts out in the Blitz, ends up in Burma. But originally, this airplane, I don't know if you can really see it, but that airplane was a British plane. It was bombing the cathedral in London, and the British, it was actually an American plane. It was bombing London, and that didn't happen. Of course, it was the Germans who bombed London during the Blitz. And I wrote the publisher and I said, that's a problem. I mean, that's we were allies. We didn't bomb them. And the editor said, "Oh, no one will notice." That's what they said. No one will notice. And I said, "Well, I notice. I want you to change that." And so what they did is they kind of aired out the insignia on the airplane. They didn't even make it like a German airplane, but it, what I mean, and it's not a German airplane that's bombing London during the Blitz. But so I mean, if it's something like that, then certainly I'll say something. But that it's rare that comes up. But it's come up a couple of times, and I will ask him to change it because it's just not historically accurate.
No.
When I did the U.S. Navy book, Rob did this beautiful submarine, and when he was done, the Pentagon said, "That's a British sub."
Yeah. See. Yeah.
So that stuff happens,
Yeah.
Well, anyway, I guess we're doing this tomorrow, and we're going to get right down to the nitty gritty, talking about writing and how we proceed, which is going to be fun. We'll show some slides and kind of do the whole process. So that'll probably be something that some of you out there hopefully are looking forward to. I'm looking forward to seeing what Jack and Jerry have to say, and we'll go over that tomorrow. That'll be great fun.
Terrific.
And I'm just going to mention, for those of you that have joined us yesterday and today, live with us, thank you so much for putting in questions and joining the conversation. But if you're not here with us live and you're watching and you want to join us again live every day this week, Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday. We're going to be coming back at the same time. I'm in Central Time, which is 2 o'clock, 3 o'clock Eastern. We're looking at noon Pacific Time. So as you're joining in, feel free to be part of the conversation. If you join in later, you're free to watch it. And probably the best way of doing this is just subscribing to Learning Live right now. That way you are notified when it's going live and any other types of conversations that will be happening here as well. So Mary Alice, do you want to end this?
I feel like for anybody that was with us yesterday and today, the link, you'll have noticed that the link changes, and that's like the technical background of all of that is because it goes live and then we've got to get you a new link. So tomorrow there'll be a new link to go live, but just as you had described, if they had subscribed to the channel, you're going to be able to join in. And I don't know, I think the 3 authors, they're going to be ready for us just to be in the background. Definitely by Friday, maybe tomorrow.
Well, if you weren't in the background, we wouldn't be in the foreground.
Well,
I would forget to plug my computer in.
so it's just been wonderful, and it's been wonderful to see the excitement behind the scenes. So we're looking forward to continuing this conversation online tomorrow with teachers and students and parents that are home for remote learning.
Great.
Good. Perfect.
Thank
Bye,
you.
everybody. Stay safe.
You too.